Troy, One Iowa, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for coming.
So, for folks who aren't intimately familiar with same-sex marriage rights in Iowa, folks watching outside of state, back up a couple years. Tell us about the struggle. Since it passed in early '09, and what's happened since then.
Well, we have been on the forefront of the fight for marriage equality throughout the country. I like to say when you look at a map of the country of all the states that have marriage equality, Iowa stands right in the middle. And for supporters of marriage, we stand out as a beacon of hope and of equal rights. But for our opposition, we're the center of the bullseye. And so we've seen over the last 2 years hundreds of thousands of dollars pour into this state, targeting gay and lesbian couples, trying to take away marriage equality here in this state. And it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge to combat that, but we've been working hard here, and we continue to fight every day, and we're happy to that marriage equality still exists here in Iowa and will exist for several years to come.
I mean, you won the fight in early '09. The voters approved. Is that right?
No, it was a Supreme Court victory, Supreme Court decision. Varnum v. Breen. It was a brilliant decision. It was a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court, both Republican appointees, Democratic appointees, and they ruled unanimously that under our state's equal protection clause that marriage cannot be denied to gay and lesbian couples. And it was a great day for our state. It was a great day for our country, and hopefully, we're going to continue to do everything we can to make sure that continues here in Iowa.
But then 3 justices were recalled, right? Tell us about that, how that came about, and why those 3 were chosen, I suppose.
Well, every so often, Supreme Court justices stand for retention. It's a yes or no vote on the ballot. 2010, as we know, was an anti-incumbent year, and this was really the easiest election on the ballot to show that anti-incumbent support. It was a straight yes or no ballot or vote. It wasn't a decision for or against someone. And so what happened was the social conservative movement here in this state coalesced around a thrice failed gubernatorial candidate named Bob Vander Plaats, who had long since been kind of the champion of social conservative causes in this state. They coalesced around him. Over $1 million in out-of-state funding, including $200,000 from Newt Gingrich, came into Iowa to combat the justices, and it was a perfect storm with a lot of money on their side, and our side, with it being the year that it was having a tough time, both financially and with enthusiasm, and unfortunately, those 3 justices lost their jobs. But, it was a tough loss. It was a tough loss, but it had no impact on marriage here in this state as far as whether it existed or not. And
it is safe.
It is safe. All it was a punitive action that did nothing but punish 3 people for doing their jobs. And, it was, like I said, it was a tough loss. But again, marriage remains here in Iowa, and, we're going to continue to make sure that remains here in Iowa forever.
How is the struggle for gay rights different than it is, say, in the coasts, Massachusetts, New York, California for a while? We'll see how Prop 8 plays out ultimately. But how's it different, or is it not that different?
It's different in some ways, but it's the same as well. It's always boils down to here in Iowa we have a much stronger social conservative presence here in this state, and that has been, one of the driving forces of our opposition. You look at the states that have it right now, New York and all the states to the northeast of them, or most of the states to the northeast of them. There's a more liberal idea. People there are a little bit more moderate. Here in Iowa, we're a truly purple state, and we have people on both sides of the spectrum. And so, that presents its challenges here, but also because we're a Midwestern state, Midwestern people are live and let live. They really don't care what their neighbors are doing. What they care about is just doing whatever they can to make our state a better place for their kids, grandkids, etc. And so, it obviously has its challenges with our more vocal social conservative movement here in the state. But at the same time, people here are much more willing and open to have the conversation about why marriage is so important, why equal rights for LGBT individuals is so important.
There's a group of Republicans that are against government telling some citizens they can or cannot marry, right? I mean, tell us about that group and the shift they've undergone.
You're talking about Iowa Republicans for Freedom? Yeah, we've been working with Senator Jeff Angelo. He was a former, he still is an evangelical Christian leader, but he, when he was in the state Senate, he actually sponsored the constitutional amendment that nearly passed the state legislature back in 2006.
To oppose same-sex marriage.
To oppose same-sex marriage. They were preemptively trying to pass this before the Supreme Court would have a chance to rule on it. And he was the lead sponsor of that amendment in the Senate. But after he left the Senate, he left in 2008. Over the last few years, he's been, really doing some soul searching, did some thinking on this. And he, came to the realization that, if you truly believe in smaller government, how can you then say that government can and cannot tell you who you can and cannot love? And so he, he's come around on this decision, and a lot of people are doing that. A lot of people are doing that all across the state. They're having that conversation. They're thinking long and hard about their gay friends, their gay neighbors, their relatives, thinking long and hard about actually what this means, what marriage equality actually means. And they're realizing that why should we be telling them, why should we be telling anyone who they can and cannot love? And so that's, I expect that it's just getting started. That group's only been around now for about 6 or 7 months, but I fully expect that over the next few months and then over the next few years, you're going to see a lot more Republicans, a lot more conservatives coming on board, truly embracing conservative values and opposing a constitutional amendment.
And, of course, there's a constitutional amendments on the ballot in 2012 in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So what is One Iowa doing kind of weekly, monthly going forward? What's on your plate?
Well, our big efforts here are, the legislative session starts next week. And last year was a really tough year. It was with the Republican supermajority in the House. We saw several discriminatory pieces of legislation. Only one actually was able to pass through the House. That was the constitutional amendment. It went to the Senate where it's stalled out, thanks to the Democratic control and Senate Majority Leader Mike Gronstal. But there's still a lot of vocal, outspoken, right-wing conservative members in the House that have vowed to do everything they possibly can to move forward legislation targeting gay and lesbian folks. Last year, two notable pieces of legislation that were introduced. One they called a Conscience Clause bill, so-called Conscience Clause bill. It, in their efforts to punish gay and lesbian couples, the bill would have allowed business owners, any business owner in the state, to deny goods and services to any married couple in the state based on religious backgrounds. So because of that, not only were gay and lesbian couples targeted by that, but interfaith and interracial couples could have been targeted under that and had their civil rights stripped away. So it died last year. We expect to see that could possibly come back. We also, there was another bill that would have prevented any marriage licenses being issued to gay couples until there was a vote on a constitutional amendment. But in a twist, would have actually stripped the Supreme Court from ruling on its constitutionality. So they just lopped off the third branch of government. So, there's a lot of people who are very extreme who want and will stop at nothing to try and pass some damaging, hurtful legislation. So obviously that's going to be our top priority throughout the legislative session. And then obviously we have the election coming up where we're going to do everything we possibly can to protect the fair-minded majority in the Senate. But in addition to that, in addition to our political work, we're going to be out there having a conversation with Iowans, having this conversation, doing everything we can to, talk to Iowans from all backgrounds, and that's been a big shift in our focus the last few months and going into 2012 and 2013, is we're no longer just going to talk to our base, no longer going to just try and, shore up our base. We have to expand the base. We have to make sure that we get, a really solid majority of Iowans who support marriage equality. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be out talking to folks, whether it's in colleges, whether it's in churches, whether it's in big towns, small towns, wherever, from corner to corner, coast to coast. We're going to be doing everything we possibly can to have this conversation with Iowans, get it sparked out there, and grow the number of people who support marriage equality in Iowa.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, we're here for the Iowa caucuses. The attention of the country and perhaps the world are here until Tuesday, until tomorrow night at least. I mean, how does all this attention, this political tension, how does it affect one Iowa struggle, the struggle for same-sex marriage?
Well, it's never easy when you have a handful of people here every week crisscrossing the state trying to court the social conservative vote by attacking gay and lesbian couples. You saw that with Newt Gingrich has made that a hallmark of his campaign, calling marriage equality a temporary aberration. You saw Rick Perry's now infamous ad about gays in the military. I mean, it certainly has been hurtful. It certainly has been hurtful to watch this play out. It certainly has been hurtful to see this sort of rhetoric, coming out of people who want to lead the entire country. But at the same time, it's also coalesced support amongst our supporters, amongst supporters of equality. They recognize and they see just how much work is left to do and how much work needs to be done yet. And so, our membership has been energized over the last few months. They want to get out there. They want to be talking to Iowans. They want to be doing everything they can to, like I said, have the conversation. And, it's been an interesting process. And I will say this, I'm going to be glad when they're gone.
I understand. With respect to marriage equality, have we seen the same amount of vitriol from all of these Republican candidates, or are there variations?
There certainly are variations. The unfortunate fact is that the people that are moderate on this issue are not getting anywhere. Gary Johnson, well, he just dropped out of the Republican process. John Huntsman, who's been more moderate on issues of equality than some of his Republican cohorts. He's not even playing here in Iowa. The one that is interesting is Ron Paul, and he's gaining support here in Iowa, and it's been interesting to see. But for the most part, most of the mainstream candidates they're not. Most of the mainstream candidates that are playing here in Iowa just really aren't there on the issue.
Walk us through what Ron Paul has said, and we can surmise he believes about same-sex marriage rights and gay rights in general.
Well, Ron Paul's been he's been a little bit fuzzy at times on this. He's clearly been a states' rights person, and clearly been opposed to a federal constitutional amendment. He's a true conservative who believes in limited government and a smaller federal government, and believes that a constitutional amendment doesn't fit into conservative principles. And so, in that regards, he's in a different spot than some of the more radical members of the field, such as Rick Santorum or Newt Gingrich, Michelle Bachmann. But personally, he still is opposed to marriage equality. He's said that several times. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out over the next few weeks. But it is interesting to see that Ron Paul has gained so much support here in Iowa and is posed to finish first or second as of today. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out tomorrow.
How about Romney? Romney, as governor of Massachusetts, he didn't say a whole lot about this, but he seems to have undergone a shift.
Well, you never know which Mitt Romney's going to actually show up. Back when he ran against Ted Kennedy back in '94, he said he was better on gay rights than Ted Kennedy, and now he's trying to make this point that he is the biggest social conservative in the race. Mitt Romney, he needs to decide where he stands on these issues. And clearly he's not as vitriolic as some of his opponents, but he's some of the stuff that he said in this campaign, which is different than what he said in '08 and definitely different than what he said in '94 when he ran for the Senate, just really, it's hard to decide where he actually stands on these issues.
In the push for same-sex marriage rights nationwide or elsewhere in the Midwest, like Minnesota, for example, or at least the defense against, anti-gay rights constitutional amendments, like we're seeing in Minnesota, how much coordination is going on between you guys and say groups in Minnesota or elsewhere?
Well, we all work with our national partners. On these issues, and I actually was at a conference a couple weeks ago and met my counterparts from Outfront Minnesota and Project 515, and we talked a lot about the race that is shaping up there, and hopefully Minnesota will be the first state that's going to proactively reject a marriage ban. And hopefully go even further after that. But, we all work together. We all work on the, a lot of testing's being done in a lot of different states on messages that work and whatnot. And so we all learn from best practices. We all do what, find out what works and do what we can to implement those practices here in our own individual states.
Is the messaging, is the fight for marriage equality evolving as we go forward? I mean, it seems like there have been phases that are kind of anti-bigotry. There are phases where the rhetoric is, standing on the side of love. How's it changing?
It's going more towards that positive messaging, I would say, and really that's what this debate is about. It's easy when your rights are being attacked, it's easy to get really defensive. But when you actually have these conversations with folks and you actually talk to them about why marriage is important and why we do the work we do, it's because we do it because of the people. We do it because of the people who want to be married, who want to have their families celebrated and recognized by the states they live in, work in, and are proud to live in. And so, that's where I expect you'll see a lot more of that sort of messaging over the coming months and years, simply because that's what this debate really is about.
You mentioned Newt Gingrich pouring in money to help recall those 3 Supreme Court justices. Any other examples of kind of right-wing money or Koch brothers money or perhaps the Mormon Church money to fight against marriage equality here in Iowa?
We haven't seen a lot of the Koch brothers money coming in specifically on marriage issues. But certainly we've seen, last year the judicial retention election was funded primarily by the National Organization for Marriage and the American Family Association. They ended up spending, collectively, that campaign spent more than $1 million to unseat the justices. And we saw it again earlier this year. We had a special election fight that would have determined control of the Senate. A Democratic senator resigned. She was in a conservative-leaning district over in eastern Iowa. And it was expected that Republicans would win that seat when it was first announced. But Democrats fought hard. We worked hard, but NAM and other groups ended up spending more than $40,000 in that election. And the Republican lost by 12 points. They tried to make that election about marriage equality and social issues, and they lost. And I think that's a real testament to the fact that here in Iowa, and I think across the country, people really, it's not the social issues that people are excited about this year and right now. What people care about is they want jobs. They want a stronger economy. They want to feel like we're moving forward, not stuck in the morass the economic sluggishness that we're in right now. And, I think that special election really showed that. And I do expect that next year, with so much writing on the state Senate, not just on our issue or other social issues, but even on issues with labor and progressive causes, the Senate's really been there to kind of stop a lot of damaging legislation that was introduced last year. So much is riding on that next year, and with only a 1-seat majority, there's going to be a lot of money coming into this state, and I fully expect that you'll see NAM, the AFA, and other groups coming in here next year and dumping a lot more money in to try and influence the outcome of that election.
Oliver, any questions you want to add? Any closing thoughts, Troy? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, just really glad that you folks are here, and hope you guys have fun here in Iowa and enjoy caucus night. This is always an interesting time. It's always fun to be driving downtown and run into reporters and stuff that you would never expect to see in Des Moines. But
Town's totally different, right?
Yes.
Every 4 years.
Yes, it is. And but on Wednesday morning, everyone rolls up and gets the hell out of town. And
I mean, other than the obvious, how's it different from 4 years ago when there was also a Democratic primary that Mr. Obama won over Hillary?
Yeah, this has been a much sleepier caucus than I have seen in previous years. In 2000, 2004, 2008, we saw on both sides really spirited campaigns being fought here in Iowa. I feel like the caucuses here really didn't get going until about a month ago or so. I mean, there were people come in, but they'd parachute out. But things have really picked up here in just the last couple of weeks, which has been an interesting turn. And yeah, but I expect in 4 years we'll see a lot more people here.
Sure, of course. Cool. Thanks so much for speaking with us.
Appreciate it.